This is the Palin Update on Mama Grizzly Radio. I'm Kevin Scholla in the new Full Battle Rattle studios.
If we should be suggesting to GOP leaders, they need to learn how to fight like a girl.
We love fighters on this program. Governor Palin has been fighting for us for years. Today, we talk to a professional fighter, boxer David Rodriguez, an amazing heavyweight. Rodriguez was cruising along with an unblemished record. Then, a murder attempt left him with hundreds of stitches and unable to get in the ring. Now, through his new book and his anti-bullying campaign, Rodriguez is helping others. The Mexican-American also happens to be an outspoken supporter of President Trump. Stay tuned. It's a good one today, folks, with David Rodriguez. Plus, we'll have the latest national and Alaska headlines in Sarah Palin News. We'll visit the Crow's Nest with Tanya Crow in California. Also from the Golden State, Kelly Carlson is on target. And a brand new installment of Liberty and Legacy with Tamara Colbert coming up from Texas. Welcome to the Palin Update on Mama Grizzly Radio. The Palin Update is sponsored by Full Battle Rattle. Full Battle Rattle, helping veterans suffering from combat-related disabilities through the healing power of music. Learn more at facebook.com/FullBattleRattleABQ. When the Lights Go Out, From Survivor to Champion. That's the book from David Rodriguez, the heavyweight boxer who almost lost his life after a brutal attack. Now, Rodriguez is spearheading an anti-bullying campaign and speaking out in support of our president. We are so pleased to have him here with us today. And right now we do welcome David Rodriguez to the Palin Update on Mama Grizzly Radio. David, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, you have this unbelievable book out that we want to talk about in a moment, When the Lights Go Out, From Survivor to Champion, and we will get into that, your amazing career and life and things you've gone through and overcome. First, though, we do want to mention you are a Mexican-American, and you've been a vocal Donald Trump supporter, and I want to just hit that first off the top here. You know, a lot of people have gotten some backlash for supporting our president when he ran for president, now as president. But, you know, you maybe, even though you've you had some backlash on that, you've stood firm there. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, well, actually, of course, I'm from a border town. I'm from El Paso, Texas, and that borders to Ciudad Juarez. And, you know, I witnessed firsthand. And it's funny you say that because I just wrote an article today on BorderlandAlternativeMedia.com, an article about being a Mexican-American and having to deal with losing friends over this, because I definitely lost a lot of peers. And the reason is because, you know, everyone's coming here, but I had no problem with illegal immigrants. I had a lot of friends that were that, and they're nice people. They're great people. A lot of them come here to work hard and just have a good living, get the hell out of Mexico. But what happened was, what I started noticing in the last couple of years of the Obama administration, the people that were coming over were not from Mexico, and I started noticing a different flood of people coming in. A lot of Muslims coming in that didn't share our background and our culture and our morals of American values, and a lot of it looked like MS-13 gang members, man. Just guys that did not look like they were here to work hard and be good citizens. They looked like thugs, and I started noticing that, and that's really what triggered me to vote for Trump, because I loved what he stood for. I loved that he wasn't controlled. And a lot of my Mexican friends were very emotional, and they couldn't see that. They couldn't see what I was seeing. And, you know, I backed Trump since the beginning. I'm not for globalism. I'm for making America great again. I want to see America strive and be the best like it was intended to be. And I knew what Hillary stood for, which was absolute, you know, global domination with the corporate powers running everything and making the laws, and I'm not for that, you know. So, of course, I'm going to back Trump.
And you're not alone, you know, losing people over this past election. I mean, people, not just friends, even family members, people disinvited from weddings and telling grandparents they can't see their grandchildren over a presidential election is just absolutely unreal. And it hasn't just been, you know, Mexican Americans. It's been women, blacks, gays. You know, yeah. The categories are all over the place, and the backlash has been amazing, and that's why we do need people who will still speak out in support of our president, you know, despite that, because when someone talks to someone like you, as opposed to listening to the media that is all against the president, well, maybe they'll get an actual look at what's really happening and change their mind.
Yeah, exactly. And like I was telling my friends, I was like, man, when you see the gays going against each other, something's up. And I
Well,
was like, man.
I mean, it really is. I mean, it's unbelievable, and I think you could pick any group and say that. So,
Yeah.
um,
Oh, blacks are against each other. I mean, it's just crazy. The divide is unbelievable. And, I tend to think of it as an emotion argument. I like to think of us as the logical ones, obviously. But I'm looking at his policies, and I have a pretty good grip on what globalism actually is. And I understand what Clinton stood for, and she was crooked. She was just as crooked as a dog's hind leg. So I'm not going to vote for that woman. I'm not trying to have the Clintons for 8 years, and then the Bushes for 8 years, and the Clintons are back in the office, Obama, then the Clintons again. Like, I think people are just fed up with it. Trump came out, and he was kind of like, nobody really backed him at first, and that's why I loved him. I was like, man, the Republicans aren't really taking him in, nor the
Right.
Democrats. He stands firm. He stands for what he believes in. He stands for something, and to me, that meant everything, because when I can see a man that's not controlled by anyone, he has no strings attached. That's my man. That's the guy I'm going for. So to me, it was like a no-brainer, and he has an empire. He did well with the Trump empire. Come on, I want to see him do well with the country.
yeah, when all the groups that we know have done bad things for our country and to our country are against someone, it's got to be a good thing to vote for that person. So,
well, yeah, I mean, they're all controlled. They're all controlled. They have big money backing them, and they have to do favors for that money. And Trump had his own money. Sure, he has friends that that they're big corporation. He knows everybody in the business, but he had nobody really back. He was using his own campaign. He was running his own campaign, is what I'm trying to say, and that to me was very impressive. And that's what sold me on him, and I really believe in what he said, and he's delivering. Now that he's in office, this guy is doing a remarkable job. Sure, there's a lot of growing pains. He's trying to drain the swamp. There's a lot of things going on, and while he's in office, but he's doing the job. It's not going to be easy. The fight has just begun.
And you use the word impressive. Speaking of impressive, David Rodriguez is impressive. In your book, When the Lights Go Out, From Survivor to Champion, you talk about your career and then your struggle to make your way back. You had some real unbelievable life experiences. You a professional boxer and not just a guy, taking a paycheck. You had 36 professional fights and you had 34 knockouts, 24 of them coming in round number 1. So this is a guy who really, was rivaling Mike Tyson's records for the quick fights.
I beat his first round knockout record, but he was a heavyweight champion of the world. I mean, there's nobody that can replace Mike.
Well, but nothing was better than everyone who paid all that pay-per-view money, and then Tyson would win in 25 seconds.
That's what people love to see, though.
Yeah. But let me ask you, David. So here you are. You're professional. You're on your way there. You talk about the heavyweight championship. That was something you were probably heading toward, at least a shot at it, and then unbelievably an attempted murder left you with hundreds of stitches to your throat, your face. You were unable to fight for quite some time. Tell us what happened and what happened afterward.
Well, in the book, I'm very, very, raw, and I'm very truthful, and I'm very vulnerable in the book, and I hope people can appreciate that. I basically was juggling two extremes. I was juggling boxing, which was a demanding lifestyle, and with that, when I would get done with a fight, I would basically run off and go to alcohol. So I'd be an athlete and then a strict athlete, and then I'd go and juggle. I needed to keep the high, so I'd go party. And I'd get intoxicated and go to bars. Well, there was a confrontation within a bar one night after I won, I think it was the 6th championship belt that I got, and I was on cloud 9, and I knew I was going to get a shot at the heavyweight championship of the world. I was breaking into the top 10 in the world, and it was just everything just looked unbelievable for me. And I'm at a bar, and there's a confrontation in the bar. The guys get kicked out. As I'm walking, later in the night, as I'm walking out of the bar, I go into much more detail in the book, but as I'm walking out of the bar, they staked out for me. And basically I'm walking, and I left my friends, and I heard footsteps behind me. And as I'm walking, I felt this really nauseating feeling. It was like my instinct. Something just kicked in, like something wasn't right. And I turned, and they all kind of got spooked, and they moved all around me. And I'm thinking, these guys don't want to fight me, whatever. So like a moron, I turn around, which I wouldn't have done unless I was, which I did because I was intoxicated. If I wasn't, I would have been on point. I would have been coherent, knowing what I'm doing. This probably would have never happened in the first place. So when I turn around, turn back around. They come behind me. The guy comes in front of me, and the guy behind me, he grabs me by my chin and just slices my throat open with a knife. And immediately I just see the blood flow out of my neck, and instantly, I'm talking instantly, I just knew I was dead. And I just saw my life pouring out of my neck, and I started blacking out. And at that moment, one of my friends comes running around the side of me, wondering what's going on. He was confused about the whole thing. He didn't know they had a knife. And then they started viciously stabbing him in his arms. And screams started going out everywhere. Everyone was yelling. And at that point, I'm laying on the street because now I'm bleeding out. And I just remember a girl's high heels run. I mean, everything that was like a rolling cinema all of a sudden became like flashes of just pictures.
Yeah.
Then I bled out. I blacked out. And then the next time I wake up, I'm in the ambulance, and the paramedics are dropping everything. They're full of blood and telling me to stay awake and screaming. And it was I just all of a sudden felt this really weird, comforting feeling. Like, I hate to say it, but it was kind of like, that's it. It was game over, and I'm okay with it. It was like I felt like I was in the hands of God. And then next thing I know, I wake up in the hospital after receiving 369 stitches in the face from a cosmetic surgeon that was one of the best in the world that just happened to be on call that night. I was very lucky, and he put my neck and chin and face and jaw back together, and told me how lucky I was, and I don't have face paralysis or anything like that. I have a smooth line from my ear going along my jaw, and the curve of my jawline into my chin, and it's a conversation piece. So that's pretty much a long story short.
Wow. I mean, and you're able to talk to people about this, and you didn't know they weren't targeting you before, right? So, I mean, do you point to your alcohol situation I know you speak to kids about bullying and others. Is that what you point to here, or is this just wrong place, wrong time? What do you think?
No, I completely take responsibility for being intoxicated. When you're drinking, bad things happen. And that's just when you go out and you indulge in drinking, and the way I was doing, I was binge drinking. Things happen. You're not on your P's and Q's, man. You're all over the place. You're messy, and when you get messy, that's what happens. And by no means am I saying I deserve this. By no means am I saying that. I'm just saying that if I would have not been intoxicated, this would have been a whole other story. It would have never happened. So I take blame for it. But that's what's so good about this book, is that I talk about my trials and tribulations along with my faults and my wins and my losses. I talk about everything. I'm just very truthful in this book. I'm not trying to hide anything. There's no need for that. People can sniff that stuff out. So I just wanted to be raw and real in the book, and I did, and I got it out of my system after I wrote the book, and I felt really good. And it was kind of like, not only was I closing the book, I was closing symbolically the book on my boxing life, if that makes sense.
Now, when you suffered this and then had to come back from these injuries, what were you thinking? Were you thinking right away the career was over as far as in the ring, or were you or then trying to come back? What was your immediate thought, and then what did wind up happening?
Well, I came back. I didn't even see a therapist, nothing. I just didn't want to hear anybody. I just went straight for fighting again, and that's when I fought Darnell Wilson on NBC, and I had an unblemished record. I was, up to that point, I was just a top prospect. Everyone was waiting for me to come back, and I came back, and I just think I was too emotional. I wasn't mentally over it, and I got knocked out in the last 10 seconds of the last round on a fight that I was winning, and it was a slugfest. I would have never fought him the way I did if I would have been, if my chi wasn't off. It was like everything, all my energy was just off. I was just a different guy. I was angry. I was very emotional. I was very depressed. And I went right back into the ring thinking that would solve it, and it only made it worse. So after that, I came back and lost again. And I lost twice in a row now. From a record that was 36-0, I come back and lose twice. Well, the third time I come back and I knocked the guy out in the first round. But by doing that, I threw my back out. When I threw my back out, I knew when I was laying in the hospital bed, it's over. This is over. God does not want me doing this anymore. So I wrote the book in the hospital bed. It took me about a month after a back surgery. And I reflected on my life very deeply, and it was very therapeutic. And basically after that, I started a Borderland. It's called Borderland Alternative Media. people can go to borderlandalternativemedia.com, and I started it with my friend Joe Biggs and a girl named Farron Franzak, and they're involved in the media. And I decided, hey, let's start really pumping out the truth and giving at least our point of views. Although we lean more conservative, but I think people need other alternate news sources right now. Everyone's being attacked, for this and that and fake news, and we don't want to be that. We're trying to be responsible journalists, and Joe Biggs loves to get out in the field and do his thing. So we're gonna have fun with this.
David, a lot of people might be bitter, having such an unblemished record and then coming back and losing after what happened to you, and then you said throwing your back out, but you said you felt that was God's plan for you when that happened and told you that was the end. I don't know, just from your voice, you sound very at peace and happy with things, and I think that proves that you believe it was God's plan. Yeah,
well, I'm a firm believer in God because there has to be a masterful engineer behind this matrix that we live in, and I just feel in my life that there's more to me than just boxing. Obviously, I can write a book, and I'm articulate to write a book. I still have the brain cells left even after a 20-year span of boxing, and I'm able to do this. So maybe if I would have stuck on in boxing, things would have been a lot worse for me. Maybe I would have had a lot of head trauma. Maybe I would have lost my motor skills. All kinds of things could have happened. It was just time for me to exit, and it was a brutal and tragic exit, but I had to go. And, I didn't bow out gracefully the way I wanted to, but at least I went out with a win. I came back the third time and won. And now I'm jumping into different things that inspire and I'm passionate about, So to me, we call it BAM. It's BAM, Borderland Alternative Media. To me, this is my new passion. I really want to kick this off and get this going.
And David Rodriguez's book, again, When the Lights Go Out, From Survivor to Champion, it's available on Amazon, everywhere. David, before we let you run, something you tackle in the book and something you've been faced with and then have been fighting for years now is bullying. You got into boxing due to bullying, and now you're helping others with an anti-bully campaign. Tell us a little bit about both ends of that. That's why you started to fight?
And I got my butt kicked by a little girl on the playground when I was a young kid. And I came home to my dad with a bloody lip, a black guy, and they couldn't figure it out. There's only so many times you could say you fell off the swing set or the merry-go-round or whatever.
Right.
And, I was just too humiliated to say that a girl was doing it. So, he took me to the boxing gym, and I started learning how to box at the age of 5. But the bullying didn't stop. I mean, I still got bullied in junior high. I didn't grow into myself till high school. And when I grew into myself, that's when it ended, when I finally just said, that's enough, and it ended. And of course I had to retaliate and protect myself. And that's what I did. And once I learned the power that I had, I was like, oh, okay, this is like the same thing as the ring. It's easier. So it's like, when that happened, that was it. So now what's funny is, I've been speaking in auditoriums and classrooms all across El Paso, Texas, and the West Texas area. And it's the irony because, this is like, in the beginning of my book, people understand like the first, second, third, fourth chapter is about me and my shenanigans in school and why I got kicked out of school. I was a troublemaker, and I was always up in front of the classroom apologizing. And now, for what I did in class or like doing something to the teacher, I was just always a class clown. And now the irony of this whole book is it comes full circle, and now I'm standing in front of the classroom with a suit and tie, telling my story to the kids and really having them relate to it. And that to me is very satisfying.
Well, that's awesome. And we love fighters on this program, from Sarah Palin to Donald Trump to actual boxers like David Rodriguez, who now is really, being even more impressive outside of the ring. And we appreciate you being here, David. Let's tell everybody again your website and also how they can get their hands on your book, When the Lights Go Out.
Yes, you can get my book, When the Lights Go Out, on Amazon. And my website now that we started and it's taking off is Borderland Alternative Media. And, Joe, like I said, Joe Biggs, who was involved with InfoWars, and he's on board with us now. And my friend Farron Franzak, who's involved in the news, we're all together and we're doing this together. So it's an exciting little venture, and I hope people can support it and jump on board.
David, God bless you. Thank you for taking some time with us.
Thank you for having me.
For much more, please visit borderlandalternativemedia.com. Now it's time for Sarah Palin News, headlines and more about Governor Palin. Happy 9th birthday, Trig Palin. Sarah Palin visits the White House in epic fashion. Elizabeth Warren rips off a Sarah Palin rally call and tries to use it as her own. What really happens when you give a disruptor a Pepsi? Palin appears on CNN's The Lead with Jake Tapper. Big news on the healthcare front. More fake news, this time Palin's son, the target. Palin responds, Grizzly style. Prayers for the Gooding family. Prayers for Bush 41. And Sarah Palin features my story on Governor Palin, Senator Rand Paul, and Colonel Rob Maness, and what these three all have in common. Thank you, Governor, for showcasing my latest sarahpalin.com article. To read about all of these stories, visit the Mama Grizzly Radio Facebook page. To see any of the governor's posts in their entirety and to read her devotionals, visit Sarah Palin's Facebook page. Follow her on Twitter at Sarah Palin USA, and don't miss the new sarahpalin.com. Now let's head to the crow's nest. Here's Tanya Crow.
Thanks, Kevin. So I'm broadcasting from good old California, where I was born and raised. And I have been in the entertainment industry, and I'm now in the yoga industry, and I'm surrounded by left-wing lunacy, and it's starting to get more and more frustrating, because when you have the Senate leader accusing the Attorney General and the Trump administration of white supremacy in their crackdown on immigration, when they are simply obeying the law and enforcing the law, when we see the actual anarchy that's happening and the mentality that's behind this law-breaking, disorderly, and in some cases criminal behavior, where is the accountability? Well, all I can say is I'm here in California, and it's about time that we wake up, smell the coffee, and set this state in a new direction. I got to figure out how I can help in that fight, because it's gotten to be beyond ridiculous. It always has been, but maybe it's just me coming to, waking up even more and more to the realities of a one-party state that can basically get away with whatever they want to get away with. I doubt I'm the only person in this state that is getting to the point where change has to happen. Hopefully we will figure this out and take the actions that are necessary to bring common sense back to this state. Till next time, this is Tanya Crow with Mama Grizzly Radio.
Tanya Crow on Mama Grizzly Radio. More from the Crow's Nest next week. Now, on target with Kelly Carlson.
Thanks, Kevin. So I want to talk about Bill O'Reilly being let go from Fox. It's too bad. I'm a big fan of Bill O'Reilly. However, being an actor in Hollywood for a long time, I have experienced some of the allegations against Bill, and I just want to mention a couple of them, because from an outsider's perspective, it can all, actually, let me rephrase that. There are a lot of women out there that claim sexual harassment that is unfounded. I mean, it's super common. There are women out there that actually make a living doing that. However, there's also real allegations, things that really do happen. I wouldn't call my experiences sexual harassment, but here's what they were. And there was a few of them, and I'm not going to mention any names, but there was one time I was out for dinner with my girlfriend, Cindy Cowan, who's a producer, and an executive of a comic book production company, a really, really big one. You know it. It's huge. An executive was there, and a bunch of us, and we were all having dinner. And the next day, Cindy called me and she said, hey, so-and-so would like to take you out and this and that. And I said, I have a boyfriend. And I did have to, have a boyfriend at the time for a long time. But thank you very much. And, we talked and we hung up. And she called me back and she goes, I'm so sorry. Wow, this guy. And I said, what? And she said, when I told him that you had a boyfriend, but thank you very much, he said that was the worst career mistake she's ever made. And that sounds so cliche, doesn't it? But he said it. And the truth is, I never, ever once was called in for any of those films, which is so nearly impossible. Never once. And this is a huge company. I'm pretty sure everybody listening has watched 2 or 3 of their films. And that affected my career all because I rejected a guy very politely. And this has happened to me numerous times. You're just minding your own business. I had another one at work on Paramount, and this has nothing to do with Paramount. We just filmed there. Paramount's amazing. And I was studying, and this producer drove up on his cart, and they were filming next to us. And he said, Kelly, rah, rah, rah. And I was studying. I'm sitting on my steps studying. And when you're shooting at work, it's all business. There's no funny business. And there really isn't. Like, people are serious about their jobs, and that's that. So I'm studying my lines, and this guy starts asking me out for dinner. And I didn't know who he was, but he claimed to be a producer on this huge film. Again, you all know of these series of films. Different company. But I hadn't heard of him. And he kept asking me out, and I said, I have a boyfriend, thank you, it's nice to meet you, and, hope your production's going great, and this and that. He kept asking me probably 4 times in the conversation, and I was like, listen, 1, I'm working, and 2, I have a boyfriend, thank you. His assistant was kind of chuckling, and they ended up driving away. I called my manager, and I was like, who's this so-and-so? He said he's producing this film next door, and he's like, I'm sorry that happened. Well, long story short, he called the production company. This guy got in trouble. I didn't know it, though. And then I found out after the fact, my manager called the production company, the other one, and I'm like, oh no, like, this guy's for real? Wait, he's in trouble? Oh my gosh. I'm like, oh no. And sure enough, never ever was called in for any of those jobs from this particular executive producer and his partner. And again, and there's more of those. And simply because you're kind of going about your day and someone asks you out and you reject them, it greatly affects your career possibilities. And it really is a bummer. I mean, because you're not out there trying to, meet people, or, you're just minding your own business or enjoying your life. And then you reject some poor guy and he gets all hurt over it and then punishes you. So when I hear the thing about Bill Riley, it makes me sad. This stuff is very, very common. Mine, of course, is not what I would call sexual harassment at all. It was just, insecure men being jerks about it, right? So, anyways, with that said, I'm a big fan of Bill Riley. I love his debates. I think he's totally above board when he's debating people. He calls people on the carpet, even on our side, and I appreciate that so much. So, I'm sure, he's done some things that are colorless, I should say, without tact, but I'll miss him. I still enjoy him. I'm still a fan of his. But, stuff like this does take place, and it's unfortunate. It really, truly is, especially when it affects your career. But now it's affecting his career. So we'll see what he does going forward. Like I said, he'll be missed. And I'm definitely going to miss listening to him. So, that's that. This is Kelly Carlson with Mama Grizzly Radio.
Tune in for more On Target next week. Now, the Palin Update with Kevin Scholla presents Liberty and Legacy. Here's Tamara Colbert.
This week, Judge Andrew Napolitano wrote an opinion editorial titled, "What if our belief in self-government is a myth?" I really wanted to disagree with him, but I found myself actually pondering this question in more depth. What if the election of one political party over the other to control Congress changes only in appearances? What if the true goal of those whom we elect to Congress is not to be our agents of self-government or to preserve our personal liberties, but to remain in power to just get reelected? Finally, I think he is understanding what all of us have known for a decade now. The federal government is broken and will never fix itself. Judge Napolitano's article takes a more cynical turn, which made it a bit tough for me to digest completely because I lean more toward the heavy optimist side of life. But taking each of his questions and running through them, I came to one single conclusion, and that is that the only answer to fixing the mess in D.C., and by mess, I mean the bastardization of the commerce and general welfare clauses, having to put term limits on Congress because they only do actually care about their reelection. I mean, you can just ask Senator Tom Coburn. I work with him every day. Congress only cares about getting reelected. It is about the fiscal insolvency of the United States, and which isn't even about a balanced budget, but more about the fuzzy math the federal government uses to calculate things such as annual increases in their budgeting, which is not realistic because sometimes, as we know, budgets don't just need to be frozen, they need to be cut. Here's the thing. Senator Coburn points out endlessly that every single penny in the U.S. budget has a constituency that is going to fight like a wounded animal to keep it. And this, my friends, this attitude is exactly why we need to shake up Washington even more than electing Donald Trump as our president. The Convention of States project and using Article 5 to put the federal government back into its tiny constitutional box is exactly what is needed. And it is exactly the only way we can put true reform at the federal level. I want to share something really exciting along the same lines. Last week, George Soros put a stake in the ground against the Convention of States. He is throwing millions of dollars now and the resources of 230 of his well-funded organizations to fight the Convention of States movement. How awesome is that? It's awesome for a couple of reasons. The first of which, the Convention of States, in using Article 5 to limit the power, scope, and jurisdiction of the federal government, the call for fiscal restraint, and the call for term limits on federal officials, such as judges, is the most dangerous weapon against the deep state than anything else. And the far left knows it. The second reason is that Soros sees the Convention of States project and our 2.2 million grassroots as viable and worthy opponents. So he's so threatened, he's had to round up 230 of his best funded organizations against us. Let's replay that David and Goliath scenario one more time. One Convention of States project organization versus 230 George Soros organizations like Common Cause, Democracy 21, and all those other radical left organizations. I want to be clear. We at the Convention of States project love this scenario. These are great odds for us, to be quite honest. And the perfect example is the Soros-funded Radical Left-Wing Center for Budget and Policy Priorities has published hit pieces over the last 2 months, masquerading as, quote, policy papers and outright misrepresenting the mission of Article 5 and the movement itself. Large print papers have run hit pieces smearing the grassroots and the Convention of States project as a whole. Common Cause even sent a lobbyist last week to the Texas legislature. I know because I was there. They sent him to testify against us in committee. But guess what? After almost 8 hours of testimony, that boob got tired, realized he didn't really want to stay there that bad to testify, and he went home without testifying. I'm sure he went back to his bosses and told them all about the awesome 250 plus Convention of States volunteers. Over 70 who actually testified aren't just ready for the fight. We've been training for this fight for almost 4 years, and even longer when you look at those of us who have been part of the Tea Party and the real conservative grassroots for almost a decade. The Convention of States Project is right now the battle line for dismantling the administrative state at the federal level. I want to encourage Judge Napolitano to read more about what the Convention of States Project is all about. You can go to conventionofstates.com, Judge. Check us out. We could use someone of your legal caliber to help us get the word out, to put some op-eds against George Soros and the radical left. The Convention of States Army needs you, Judge Napolitano. What I love most, though, is that Soros knows that Democracy 21, Common Cause alone, cannot stand up to what the Convention of States is all about. It's awesome. And actually, those 230 organizations, we're going to make mincemeat out of them. And when I say this, I'm actually being serious. I find it hilarious, but I am being serious in the fact that we, in the Article 5 movement with the Convention of States Project, we must be victorious. Otherwise, the alternative is almost unthinkable. It means the ultra-left wins. The radical left wins. Those 60s leftover teachers' lounge morons win. And the government keeps growing. The power in D.C. continues to gain more power, become more of the central focus, and the people's liberty will dissolve into centralized servitude. I say, heck no! The time is now. Join me at conventionofstates.com. Get involved in the front lines of the battle against the left's attempt to fundamentally transform America. Tweet me this week at Tamara Colbert, hashtag Mama Grizz Radio, and please also stay tuned and watch to see what Obama is going back to do now. I've read some articles this week. He's getting back into his old day job of community organizing, trying to raise up more radical haters for his buddy and pal, George Soros. Folks, the time is now. This is it. The battle is on. May God bless us and our nation in our fight to save the Republic. I'm all in. Are you? I'm Tamara Colbert for Mama Grizzly Radio. Have a blessed week.
Tamara Colbert in Texas. Tune in for more liberty and legacy next week. And to learn about Convention of States, head to conventionofstates.com. The Palin Update, including Liberty and Legacy, On Target, and The Crow's Nest, is on demand and available for download. So just head to mamagrizzlyradio.com, pick the show you want to hear, and you can listen anywhere, anytime. Well, that'll just about do it for this edition of the Palin Update on Mama Grizzly Radio. Visit mamagrizzlyradio.com for continuing coverage of Governor Palin. Also, like Mama Grizzly Radio on Facebook and follow along on Twitter at Mama Grizz Radio, at Kevin Scholla, at Tamara Colbert, at Tanya Yoga 13, and at FBR ABQ. And I'm doing some writing for Breitbart News. Just go to Breitbart.com and search Kevin Scholla. I'm also contributing to SarahPalin.com. Please check out my latest piece this week. Visit SarahPalin.com/author/Kevin-Scholla. Honored to be working on the governor's new site. I want to thank Tamara Colbert, Tanya Crow, Kelly Carlson, and everyone here at Mama Grizzly Radio. Thanks to David Rodriguez. And thank you for listening today. A special thanks to our sponsor, Full Battle Rattle. Visit Facebook.com/FullBattleRattle, ABQ. The Palin Update is produced by Lena Anderson, the Andy L. Kramer, and Lori Ann Lewis. Please be sure to join us again next time for another edition of the Palin Update right here on Mama Grizzly Radio. I'm Kevin Scholla. Have a pleasant day.